The Entrepreneurship and Art episode that you're about to watch is unedited and uncut. Listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your preferred podcast platform for the edited version. Enjoy.
Here we are.
George, Carly.
Hi, Dan.
Hello. Hi, Dan.
Carly, did you
This-
notice Dan's
This is Carly
attire?
speaking. I did notice Dan's attire. It is a wonderful Entrepreneurship and Art t-shirt. Where did you get that?
Yeah, no kidding. And why don't I have one?
I got it on Teespring. I made it on Teespring because I'm interested in made-to-order stuff, which has been around for forever. And I remember a band I was in high school made like made-to-order mugs. And
What was the
stuff.
name of your band in high school?
The Billy Bauer Band. Not the most.
What was on the mug?
Where'd you come up with
a
that
dog
name?
head. It's someone's been around forever, but I feel like it's
Billy
not
Bauer, that
utilized
name?
much. No, made to order printing. Billy Bauer.
Oh,
The name has been around forever. There's a jazz musician named Billy Bauer from.
Well, I bet
knows?
the namesake for the Billy Bauer band has been around since Billy Bauer was born.
I think it's
Right.
Billy Bauer the third.
It was not like Leonard Skinner or something, right? It wasn't like your janitor at high school, right?
No.
But that's who Leonard Skinner was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Leonard Skinner was like when the dudes in Alabama were trying to cook up their name for their band, they couldn't come up with anything, and so they named they named him after their janitor band, Leonard Skinner. so some dude, some janitor at some Alabama high school or whatever, and then now he will go down forever as. But yeah, no. So on demand, I
bet he's gonna get booted in a second.
Yeah,
All right, I can edit this.
we can't hear you, George.
I wonder if he knows.
I don't know. I think you might be frozen as well.
Well, it depends how long he was intending on doing this monologue for. Either he gets frozen and not realize, or he'll see
It's
us
true.
frozen and realize, or he's just
He's
on a
still
rant.
just
He's not
talking.
even gonna notice. Yeah.
True.
So, we're gonna put an outtake section at the end of the episode. There you go. Oh, and now I can't hear you anymore. Your microphone is firmly planted in the back of your hair.
This is going well.
So this
Can
is
you
the
hear me
best time.
now?
That's actually perfect, because then
Okay.
as long as you don't move your head too much, I think it's good.
I'll stay very still. This is like the most ridiculous. I have a tight chin strap.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so that's too bad. How do we fix this? I knew we should have started a little bit early.
Yeah. I mean, there's no fixing that really needs to happen, because I'll just edit it out. But
Yeah.
That went well. I was telling this hysterical story. And I was like, wait, Dan, are you frozen? And then I was like, Carly's frozen. My computer's frozen.
Then you got
It just
booted.
stopped. What?
This is what happened to me when we were doing that Boston Managers Group webinar, and my heart just stopped when that happened. It happened like 3 times, and because I thought that was going to take down the whole YouTube stream.
We have to start over. Like, I'm not like,
Yeah.
I mean, but I don't, I mean, what the fuck? Like, my computer froze. Just, I had to press the, power key on my computer.
Oh, really?
And it,
Wow.
yeah, it's just like locked up.
Why don't you just do what I'm doing?
I don't know.
I mean, not the hair piece, but record on your phone.
Or you could do Zoom on a different device.
Yeah, I'll
on
zoom
separate
on
Yeah.
this.
device.
I'll zoom on this because that's probably what was going on.
Yeah, and then you don't need once you have your volume set up on GarageBand, you don't need to be listening to what's going on in GarageBand. So you can just wear one set of headphones.
Right. Oh, gotcha. Okay, so that's okay. All right, hold on. So
Here's our new intro sound. We'll kick it off with a belch.
I'll sample that and we'll just
Was it deep into resonance?
Yes.
not once I'm done with it. Bring it up 3 octaves. Yeah.
All right, well, now let me go get another set of headphones because these are incompatible with my iPad.
I was asking you earlier about the weather where you were yesterday because it was snowing here.
Yeah, we had the briefest flurry, but we did get a tiny bit. How bad was did you get a couple inches or what? Was it?
It snowed for like hours and it
Really?
stuck on the ground, but then there was melt in the afternoon. But I'm like, oh, right.
Is it warmer
spring
today?
on the East Coast. Yeah, well, it's going to be pretty crappy here still all week. It's going to be rainy though, not snowing. But I can't believe it snowed in May. It was snowing in New York. It was snowing in Boston.
Weird.
What a time to be alive.
It's just weird. Yeah, well, and because the winter, at least here, seems so mild.
Yeah, I was not happy with that though. It's been like full on summer in Berlin for weeks now.
Yeah. Think you go back to Berlin?
I don't know. I got to figure that out. What about you? Are you making plans to head back?
Nothing concrete because it's New York has pretty straightforward requirements for when different regions can come out of lockdown.
But do you have a date yet? Like, are they saying
because
when
they want 2 weeks of decreasing cases.
Right.
And so actually, I think New York is on the decreasing cases, but there's other metrics that New York doesn't hit.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I was reading a New York Times article today about so many people are buying property or starting new leases in Connecticut and New Jersey, leaving the city altogether. I don't. My girlfriend and I talked about that, but she's a teacher, so she's going to have to go back into school. She can't.
Maybe.
They're going to do like staggered teaching.
Okay.
In the fall, so like grade 5 has Monday, grade 6 has Tuesday, 7 Wednesday.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you mean? So they're only going to go to school like a couple days a week?
Yeah,
and then do the rest online?
That's what they're going to do. Yeah,
1 day a week and then remote the rest.
Wow.
At least to start, until there's I think there's going to be a bunch of stuff like this until there's a vaccine that is accessible by everyone.
Crazy though. All right, do we have you back, George?
Keep doing that. Like a child.
The pure joy on your face right there.
Yeah.
I love stuff like that. All right. You do have me back, but I don't know if this is working. Let's see here. Are you working? Not seeing this now. Oh, I need to. Why does it start with a grand piano? It's ludicrous.
Say what you will about my Nokia phone. I feel like we're at some technical ability levels, George.
I feel like a 95-year-old, Asian woman.
I'm wearing a microphone in my hair, not like a regular way.
We need some metric where it's like if we hit 1,500 listeners an episode, you guys are forced to get proper.
We must invest.
Yeah.
Get what? What do I have to get? I have everything. There's literally nothing more I can buy. I just can't use it. Oh, how? All right, Dan. I have my new track. How do I change my input? Input 1. Okay, I got it. I got input 1 is my Yeti microphone. Let's see here. Test, check, 1, 2. Oh, that's super loud apparently. How do I? Hello? Oh yeah, that's really too loud. How do I?
Sounds odd too.
Check, 1, 2, check.
You've got the recording volume in GarageBand, and I think also on your microphone, you've got an input level.
Yeah. Headphone volume. And check.
way, way too loud. Why would it be so much louder now? Check 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And I've got the metronome going. That's nice. Okay, turn that off. All right. Let me try that again. I'm going to delete that nonsense. It's in stereo. How do you feel about that?
I'll just sum it to mono, but
There's got to be a way. Okay, so I've got microphone input 1 and 2 as my Yeti. Like, why is it in stereo? Like, how do I?
oh, because those Yetis are stereo mics. It doesn't matter because I'll sum it to
the
mono.
pattern. All right, so let's. I'm sorry to make you all do this again, but let's just hit record again, and then I will output and share it. All right, so
So this is going to be my jam. Like right now, it's recording. Can you all say something?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
I can hear you both.
You sound
all right,
better
and I'm
without the
talking.
headphones.
That's because
Yeah,
we're
it's probably
hearing it
just
through the AirPods.
muffling my thing. Yeah. All right, but all right. So now I've recorded a stereo version of that. Now I go to share, export to disk. Here comes friend 1 again. High quality export. This makes me so nervous. Software update, no. All right, now let's see here. Dan, I'm going to send this to you. 7 hours later, we start our podcast.
It's worth spending the time to get this right once.
Totally. After last week, I mean,
it's all right. This is why we're doing it.
I know.
Grand experiment.
Great. Now what Hitler called fascism.
It is. All right, it's a grand experiment, not the grand experiment.
Can you check that? I
Yeah,
just flagged it to you.
Sounds great.
Really? All right. So I am going to, in the interest of trying to make sure that what happened last time doesn't happen again, I'm going to try to kill as many things as I can. Stupid, antiquated technology they refer to as a laptop.
When this is all over, we should do a video of you just ranting about all the things you love to do on your iPad that you can't do on your laptop, and film you trying to do your daily workflow on your MacBook.
It's like trying to teach a dog a fucking card trick
with his virtual background.
Well, it's still. I Zoomed with my parents yesterday with Henry. The entire thing was just this. Like looking at my parents doing this. Yes, like stop doing that. I'm them. All right. Okay, I'm gonna press record on my GarageBand. I can no longer hear like my microphone. Well, I don't know. I guess it's okay. You don't know. As
long as the volumes are okay.
It's not. Nothing's clipping. I'm gonna turn it down because you can always make it louder. But
yep.
Test. Okay. Test. If I get really angry, test. Okay. All right, that's probably fine. All right, we're off to the races.
What take is this?
47.
Take seamless. Dan, you're wearing a shirt. You've decided to wear a shirt on today's podcast instead of your normal
of nothing?
Justin Theroux no shirt look.
You want one?
What? Well, I so it's got the name of our podcast on it and website and everything else. Where did this come from?
I bought it from Teespring. I don't think I'll use Teespring again. There's got to be better companies out there.
For some sort of made-to-order thing that you just decided to go ahead on your own and make a T-shirt for our podcast, and you have one. It's a test,
and we don't.
And you know what? I'm glad I only did one as a test because I moved the design about 2 inches higher.
I think it looks really good.
And actually, you can't see over Zoom, but there's this weird white outline
No,
around the ampersand.
no one can see that, and
No
no one
one-
listening will be able to see that either.
Well, no, I'll take a photo and we'll include it in the show notes.
But no, I've been using. I love the kind of just in time on demand thing back in the, like when it first started in the whenever the early 2000s. Zazzle, remember that? Are they still around? Zazzle?
I think they are.
Zazzle,
Yeah.
Cafe Press was a big one.
Right, Cafe Press, yeah, and like the whole world was like, well, this is, and it's just in time manufacturing, at scale, which is smart and allows you to test things. But so I, of course, cook up in my mind. I'm like, okay, well, I am going to clearly become a billionaire with my genius little witticism and bon mots. And so I go to Zazzle and I make a bumper sticker, and I have like the design skills of like Helen Keller. And so it's just a white strip of bumper sticker material, and then like a sans serif Arial, some kind of font, and on it says, "I break, BRAKE, like a little girl." And I sold like 100 of them.
Really? And your $1 profit per per.
No, I didn't. I'm sure I lost money on it, but like there's at least 100, and this is like early-ish. There was no like social media or whatever, right? And so it was there's like I couldn't tweet it out or whatever, but like so randomly some Dylan people or whatever found. I think that's funny. I break. BRAK. For those of you who don't understand, Bob Dylan has a song called "She Breaks Just Like a Woman," BREAK, right? But I just thought, on a car, I break like a little girl. Yeah.
Such a leap.
I guess y'all's response is awesome. Mirrors like the planets. The planet was like, what?
Well, you found your people, George. There's 100 of you.
I bet they owe me a fortune, because it's like one of those things where like I completely forgot about it, and it's probably tied to like a Hotmail account or something, because it was like 2004 or something. So there's probably some Hotmail. You have money from Zazzle. Here's another $12 for some freak who accidentally bought "I Break Just Like a Little Girl."
Well, the benefit.
How are you all doing?
The benefit is you didn't lose money on it because it shouldn't have cost you anything to make it. That's the whole point. Well,
but it's not even opportunity cost, because I was delighted through the whole process.
Yeah,
it made me really happy. Like there's a flip side to opportunity cost with entrepreneurship. Like everyone's like, and I'm big on this opportunity cost, because most people don't think that through. Like, oh, it doesn't cost anything. Of course, it costs something. It costs your time. It costs everything else. But if in your own life, if you are just enjoying your time, then it's positive opportunity cost, because you could be doing something you hate. So like I loved the process of just thinking up "I break like a little girl" and putting that on. Like I would have way rather been doing that than like making a spreadsheet or something. So life is all opportunity.
What car did you have at the time that you put it on?
Oh, I didn't put on my car. I do have a funny story about my car though. So I decided that how do I tell this story without sounding like just an unbelievable douche? So
give it a go.
It's like the audience knows you.
Well, so I like my car. It's a nice enough car in the scheme of cars. Where I'm not like a car guy or whatever. But like I like a nice car. And so it's white, and I decided, given the car that I have, that it needed a bumper sticker. because the majority of people would not put a bumper sticker on the car that I drive. So I Google around looking for a bumper sticker for my car, and it's really specific. I had two choices in mind for my bumper sticker. I wanted either a Public Enemy bumper sticker or the Smiths, the Hatful of Hollow image, which is just like a badass image. neither of which, in theory, like the VIN overlap of people who drive the car that I drive and would have either of those stickers is zero, is me, right? I'm the only one. And so I find a Public Enemy bumper sticker, and it's, you know, the badass logo with the, you know, the little, it's just that great classic Public Enemy logo. So I'm thrilled by this. And so I order it, and, you know, a couple weeks later it comes, and I'm looking at it, and as I have a white car, and I get the thing, and it's one of those adhesives, like you put it on and then you you peel it off, and so I go out and I get the Windex and my you know, rag, and I clean the bumper, and I put it on. I'm trying to line it up right, and of course I don't. I'm bad, like, spatially, like I can't. I'm always kind of like Adam West and Batman, like the world is always, I'm spatially, I'm very bad. And so I do my best to kind of make it straight, and I peel it off thinking it's going to be this big reveal. It's invisible, because I had bought a white bumper sticker and then put it on a white bumper. And I thought it was going to be like black. I don't know what I thought. Like, you know, I thought it was going to be black on it, on the white, and be like this big statement. And instead, it's a white lettering on a white bumper. It's completely invisible unless in this is like kind of smudge of public.
Did you leave it on? Did you?
Of course I did. It makes me really happy now, because it's like, do you like, is that? Do you have a Public Enemy bumper sticker, or is that a mistake? So yeah.
That's like, that reminds me, like when I got my first tattoo, which is on my chest. No one can see it, but I felt like that much more of a badass, because like, I have a tattoo. No one knew, but it's something only you know is there.
But your chest is pretty visible.
Well,
My
I mean,
chest
usually
is
you do the
Well,
podcast without a t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not like your chest isn't a totally hidden part of your body. What is your tattoo?
Yeah, it is.
If you have
You're
a shirt
constantly
on,
wearing a shirt.
he's like
Yeah, I think
what's
I
his
don't
name
often
A
go
never
out in
nude?
public
Are you
without a
a
Yes.
never nude?
he's yeah, like Jobias. What was his name? Jobias?
No, Tobias was the other.
Oh, Tobias. Yeah, Job and Tobias. Tobias Funke.
Yeah.
From
How
yeah,
often
and
do
he
you
was a
go
never
out
nude.
without shirts on? I go to the
Well,
beach
Pardon?
like twice a year.
Well, that's not enough.
You're
Yeah,
never
which is
nude.
ironic, being a subway right away from the beach. I like it. But, hey,
You
What
should
is your
think
tattoo
about
of?
you should think about a skin-colored Public Enemy tattoo.
Those are a thing now. Skin, like the kind of invisible ink tattoos where it's not colored. It's like they're very,
Why?
very, yeah, I don't know.
Why? Well, I started
What
that
is it?
trend by getting.
Invisible ink, where like you use an ultraviolet light and you can see it, or it's
Well, no,
just
it's
it just
invisible
looks
ink was
like
the wrong, but it's like you can get like skin colored or like they're just barely visible tattoos. But that's a thing now.
Why? Well,
I
I
don't know,
started
maybe-
it with my white on white bumper sticker of Public Enemy.
Yeah, but I want to know what your
But
tattoo
you know
is,
that
of,
it's there. That's another
That no
podcast
one sees.
episode. Well, I've got
Another
the one on my arm
episode.
now. That's the
Yeah.
Oh, the F hole. The F hole. That's sweet. Yeah. My next. Yeah. Okay.
He won't talk about his chest tattoo though.
That's fine.
It's
And I
very
got
intriguing.
it. I got it because then
I bet. Wait. I'll get a guess. I'm gonna guess what it is. It's
There's
a.
no way you guess. You would
It's the logo
Nope.
of, like, I'm gonna think of some
already.
embarrassing.
It's
That's
text.
fine. An embarrassing band from like your childhood that, like,
Nope.
at the time,
It's
you
actually
would have
not
been
a
like,
music tattoo.
you know,
Give
but in
us
my
a
mind
hint.
it is. No,
But why are
no,
you going to guess something wrong?
It's
no,
the
because I'm.
because he wants to make a joke at my
Yeah, he
expense.
doesn't care. He wants to make a specific joke.
I didn't try to think. It's like,
Like,
I
is it
can't
Dave
think.
Matthews' face?
Yes, perfect. It's the Dave Matthews Band logo.
Self-burn.
That's
Yeah.
that's
No,
perfect.
it's actually the title of my favorite commercial of all time.
Sprite.
No, what? No.
You have a favorite commercial? I didn't know commercials have. I guess they have titles.
Yeah, there was a commercial that meant a lot to me, and I was like, It represented
Is
something
it
that
just do it?
important. No, but it is Nike. Good. Not just do it.
All right. Well, I guess we'll
Do
never
I have to
know.
dive into? I don't want to derail the entire pod. It'd be a good discussion for when we don't have anything else to talk about. We have so
I have
much
so
things
much to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have
Let's
so much to
save
talk
that
about.
for another day.
We're
Yeah.
tabling.
Okay. I in my mind, you 1000% have the Dave Matthews Band logo, like huge, like just some gargantuan DMB right across, and like a picture, like an outline of the violin player or something.
Oh, we don't talk about the violin player anymore.
I don't talk about the violin player ever. I'm surprised
That
I even
dude
know
got in
there's a
trouble.
violin player.
Why?
I don't know.
I don't know anything about the violin player.
Taking advantage of some dude in a younger band, and there's some sexual aggressive stuff there, and yeah, he's kicked out of the band. Yeah,
As he should have been.
Yeah, well,
Wow, way to bring it down, Dan. So how okay. Well, I think we should. I mean, a couple of important things have happened. One is apparently we have a T-shirt because Dan just goes right on ahead and just makes I'd like, if possible,
Pants.
Yeah, entrepreneurship in art pants.
Hats,
I mean,
sweatbands.
apparently we have merch, and then we also got. So we're doing this thing now where people who want to ask business, art, entrepreneur questions can come to the website for the show and submit a question, and that is good. And we've been getting some, and we got one from that I thought was interesting that I think we should talk about if I can find it. What was the question? Because it related to my article, I think, right?
Yes. I can read it out to you if you want.
Well, you do. No, I mean, I remember. Just summarize it. I got it somewhere. But
so the question is, what it was in response to your Forbes piece about Travis Scott, the Travis Scott concert on Fortnite, and essentially the question that she asked, there was apparently the collaboration between Travis Scott and Fortnite was cited back to February. So that was before COVID was really seen or was taken really seriously in the US. And so the question is, in that sense, was the inception of this concert due to a disappearing market, or was it more so about leveraging an audience through a different medium, regardless of the live market's existence?
That's fantastic. And so just for those who don't spend their time reading my articles, the idea of the article was that the Travis Scott Fortnite moment was significant because it was a what I keep overusing the word skeuomorphic kind of way in which you could take a typically offline experience playing live, musicians playing live, and do it online in a way that isn't just, hey, here I am sitting on the couch playing. So the question is the right one. I mean, these things don't just spring up out of the air, and you couldn't possibly like make that happen quickly, though they did do it remotely. I mean, they were all quarantined. But so the way I want to answer that question is that it relates to a lot of the feedback that I've gotten from that piece, which is, sure, George, that's great, but guess what? I'm not Travis Scott. I'm an artist. I can't just go to and that's of course correct. But what you can do, and I think what it speaks to, is you can have that mindset of innovation. And we talked about this a little bit last week, right? Like where those types of gestures occur because of a mindset, because of a culture, of value of a company or an artist that has, where they're constantly thinking in that way, and then occasionally it dovetails with a moment in time like this, and you look like an absolute genius. But they would have done that anyway. It's just because they had that mindset, when something like this occurs, they're able to really, really, be perceived as kind of seizing the moment, when in fact they're always seizing the moment. And so for artists out there who are thinking, yeah, I can't do that any more than I could have done in Rainbows or something like Radiohead did. No, you're right. But you can have this mindset of innovation. You can look to this as, wow, I need to be thinking more about smashing disparate pieces of content or whatever, collisions together, rather than just kind of waiting around for the market to shift, because then you will always be behind. So it's a great question, and it actually makes a ton of sense when you look at it in the rearview mirror. Oh, if you have a culture of innovation, then when these types of moments occur, you tend to be much better positioned than those who are late adopters and are just kind of lagging. So I think it's a great question. I encourage people, like I'm going to just start taking, because I get a bunch of this questions, just through various channels. I think this is the only way I will field questions. Like if people want to ask business questions or whatever, for whatever reason, just send them through the Entrepreneurship and Art kind of what you call it, little template thing, and we'll talk about them.
We'll start including a link to that in the footer of all articles.
Yeah.
But
It was a great question, though.
One more thing on that question that brings up, there are so many, this whole quarantine, COVID-19 situation did not necessarily create new opportunities. It's just forcing people to look at all the other places where they should have been anyway. And that's the innovation mindset. It's I don't want to say disappointing, but the fact that it takes this type of situation for people to be like, maybe I should be putting stuff on YouTube, as simple as that, or I should be using Instagram, all of Instagram's features where my fans already are, the very base level, just alternative to going on tour, or just content places, content platforms where every other industry is taken advantage of. Every other entertainment industry is doing Instagram Live, is using YouTube the way people now expect YouTube to be used. The fact that it takes quarantine for the music industry to really adopt it.
But I think it's also something that you've said before, is something like quarantine, which is so unprecedented to all of us. People feel more comfortable experimenting with things that might fail because everyone's kind of doing something a little bit different. So while it is maybe too bad in a sense that it takes something like this, some people need really extraordinary circumstances to step outside of their comfort zone.
It's also an accelerant, right? I mean, it's
exactly.
Yeah.
Which is also
But all of those pieces together, I will say one thing. No one is allowed anymore to say never let a good crisis go to waste, right? Like if I hear one more person say that, I'm going to beat them over the head, right? That's not a funny, clever, it's an insensitive line, right? It's something that actually grew out of politics, like probably Henry Kissinger or something about the Vietnam War or something. People are literally dying, right? It is not a clever business person speak to go, oh, never let a good crisis go to waste. It makes you sound like a complete dick, right? Don't say
Warren
that.
Buffett.
Okay, in all respect to the Oracle of Omaha or whatever, but people are dying, and so like, we are unbelievably privileged, and we can look at this as we should, and I think we have a duty to do this and look at it through a business lens, but on balance, it would have been better if COVID-19 had not happened. Right. So totally. Yes, let's not, it's one thing to kind of be like, okay, we have a duty to try to, act at our highest and best intention during this time. It's another to use it as some sort of like opportunity. It's just gross. Right. And so I see businesses and companies and individuals doing it. It's not right. It's really just a very deeply inhuman thing. And it's exactly why people appropriately look at things like capitalism at its extreme as just, exploitive, because that's what it is. Right. But all that aside, you're both right, of course. I mean, people innovate when they have nothing left to lose. And there's a lot of that going on. Dan, you're right. The music industry, my friend said it, but I've stolen it. I can't remember who said it, but the music industry innovates just slower than the Amish. They always wait. And then, yeah, it is an accelerant. It is like a lot of things that would have happened anyway are happening because of it faster. But man, like that tension between, all of that's happening. On the other hand, I mean, this is unbearable, and a lot of the industry's not going to come back. And Carly, you mentioned in one of our early ones, like the great fears are just be less artists on the other side of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But so it's go ahead.
One point of clarification: Warren Buffett didn't say that about this crisis, but people have.
No, I know.
Well, for the sake of being clear, yeah. I don't know what he said it about.
But you know what I mean, right? I mean, it's just like we're all trying to find that balance, and I think this is an accelerant generally too, in terms of kind of the white maleness of things generally. It's I don't want to get political, but it's just so the people for whom are most affected by this thing are so often the people that are disproportionately affected by everything else, and then so it just cements this quote opportunity for people that always have more opportunity. So it's important, I think, to recognize that, and I certainly recognize that about my own standing, but then also to look for these moments where this innovation is coming from the margin, because it's always where it comes from. I mean, and I'd be remiss in saying, I mean, Little Richard died yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about innovation coming from the margin. Oh my gosh! I mean, I got the byproduct for me of COVID-19 is like I've always been a troubled sleeper, but now I just don't sleep. And so last night I was just like got really upset about the whole Little Richard thing, and the fact that there's no public acknowledgement from the government about this person for whom there would be no rock and roll I mean, certainly, Ike Turner, Rocket 88 is maybe the first song. I think Little Richard even said that he heard Rocket 88 and that kind of changed him. But I don't want to go. I mean, there are people that will do it far better than I about the travails that Little Richard had to overcome and endure to do what he did. And then when you have people like Bob Dylan, who rarely tweets, basically saying, I owe my career to him, and Brian Wilson saying, I kind of owe my career to him. It's like when you have Bob Dylan and Brian Wilson, who are the architects of the modern American songbook, saying, yeah, it was this guy. And yet we have nothing from it's because he was a black person. Sorry, and Elvis didn't invent rock and roll. Sorry, and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and Bob Dylan were not the first artists who wrote their own and sung their own songs. Like actually people in fields were in jazz musicians, but Little Richard was the first. Everyone's like the modern singer-songwriter era started with Bob Dylan. No, it didn't. It started with Little Richard. People don't talk about that because he was black, and it's just.
But you're saying the people that should be talking about it are talking about it, and doesn't that have more value than the government putting out maybe some tone-deaf recognition of his passing, as opposed to the people who understand and value his influence and can speak about it with empathy and compassion? I mean, I don't know. It could make you just as upset, if not more upset, to have some tone-deaf tweet said, or insensitive, surface level thing. If you're not going, it's like a variation of if you have nothing nice to say, but if you have nothing kind of valuable to say, why include yourself in the conversation? I mean, without saying his name, I don't think it's clear who I'm talking about.
He's
him
a great
him tweeting about it wouldn't have made the situation better. It probably would have made you more upset.
You're probably right, but I think it's a metaphor to me about this administration's fundamental disconnect from all things art, right? I mean, say what you will about Obama, say what you will about George Bush's, right? There was always some connection to art, and here it's like, and to me that's soul, right? The soul, like there's just this it's Lucinda Williams' song, you're a man without a soul, and there's never a mention art, of painting, of music, of poetry, of anything, right? Who's our poet laureate right now? Or, I mean, like so as a society, we have this leader who is like, who's Trump's favorite artist, right? Like, I mean, you know, like we know that
Kid
like
Rock.
Kid Rock and Ted Nugent come to the White House, and that's okay. I mean, like it's okay if people like that music. It's not for me to taste his taste, you know. But like it's just there's such a vacuum when it comes to art, and we as a society and we as a culture need to decide. I mean, if we want our institutions to put art as one of the pillars, which, I mean, obviously humans need that, then our institutions should embrace that too. It's a choice. Or we can just embrace unfettered capitalism and see where that gets us. And so you're right, Carly. I mean, a tone deaf acknowledgement would probably make me angrier, but at least it would say, hey, this exists. This is, I mean, in my mind, and I said I wasn't going to go deep, but why I literally started crying last night was because Little Richard was America. Like, I mean, if you think of the arc of America and the marginalization of people and the overcoming of things through art and the empathy that art can engender and the way in which Little Richard was able to combat racism and just how weird he was. I mean, like, by his own admission, he was just such a character. And like, I you know, I said in one of my tweets, like, you know, no Little Richard, no Prince. And I think Prince would be very fine with that statement. I also wanted to say, and I don't know if he would be fine with this or they would be fine with this, but like, and Carly, maybe you can comment because I know you're a fan, but arguably no Little Richard, no RuPaul, right? And so, again, he can speak, they can speak for themselves, but I for me, it's America, and his death just seems to coincide so much with the death of the promise of America, and now it's just, man, sorry for the rant, but I you know, I'm not sorry for it. Like, if we can't talk about Little Richard on a podcast called on the day after his death, Entrepreneurship and Art, then I don't want to do it.
Of course we can.
Yeah, it's a drag. I remember he, you know, for many years, and I don't know where he lived in. there's I guess it's still there. There's the Hyatt house on Sunset in Los Angeles, which is known as the Riot House. There's a hotel where Zeppelin, like, if you've ever seen Almost Famous, like that hotel, that's where Zeppelin like did all of their nonsense, and you know, John Bonham threw a TV into the pool or whatever. Little Richard lived there like for decades, and so I would, like, when I would go to LA, it's like I would stay at the Hyatt on Sunset just in the hopes, because you would hear stories that like periodically you'd see Little Richard walking through the halls with like his turban, you know. I mean, it wasn't the Four Seasons. I mean, it was just like a Hyatt, you know, but he just took up residence at the Hyatt house on Sunset for decades. It was like, okay, it's Little Richard's room. It's like, so I'd always stay there in the hopes that, like, I never saw him, but like, just, it's like Boo Radley or something, but just like knowing, fuck, it's like Ignatius J. Reilly from Confederacy of Dunces. Like at the end of Confederacy of Dunces, Ignatius J. Reilly, like, is just gone. He's just off. He's still out there, you know, that spirit. I'm gonna start crying again now. And like, just the idea that Little Richard in his turban was wandering through the halls of the Riot House, like, made the world a better place, in the same way that like Ignatius J. Reilly is wandering through the world. You can't kill him, you know, he doesn't die. But like, that's America, like, that there's an Ignatius J. Reilly or a Little Richard or someone just wandering through the halls of America, and now one of them's not. So, yeah. Anyway, what'd you all write about?
Well,
Go ahead, Carly.
nothing very profound after that. That's a hard topic to follow.
It's okay. Well, Little Richard's a hard act to follow, you know. Like, they're not gonna make another one.
Is that how it works?
I can promise you, it's not. And I mean, oh, you know what? You're just like Little Richard. No, you're not. There's a really good. It's a troubling podcast, but what's his name? Jake Brennan does a podcast called and I can't remember, Disgraceland, and he does an episode on Little Richard that's worth listening to. But man, just listen to the records, just listen to the records.
What's your favorite record?
Oh man,
Or song?
Or song. Let's add to the playlist.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I'll add a bunch to the playlist because some of them aren't the obvious ones.
Great. We're going back to the George podcast, the George playlist.
And I'll shut up about it. He didn't write that many songs. Like he didn't like. It's not like he's got thousands of songs, but the ones that he did, it's like they say about the Velvet Underground. It's like only 1,000 people heard him, but all 1,000 people started a band. In the first go round. It just his impact was greater than his output. So, anyway. Let's move to like more structured things about writing. Carly, in my insomnia, I read your amazing piece on nudging, and I think it's super relevant to marketing generally, and just kind of thinking through the applicability of how we better kind of get great art out there and get other people to know about it, which is really all I care about. And so can you like explain the concept in lay person's terms about nudging?
Yeah. So I've had the real pleasure actually of spending time with probably a dozen or so Nobel laureates in economics. And for me, if I'm totally honest, when I first started that work, I didn't really understand much about economics. I had to take some economics courses when I was studying journalism, but never liked them, never really felt like it was super applicable. And I realized how applicable economics is just in such a wide variety of things.
Microeconomics, incentives and things. That's what
well,
you're saying, right?
I mean, development economics, behavioral economics, macroeconomics,
but not business cycles, not macro stuff, not kind of GDP and things.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all actually, it is interesting, but the branch of economics that I find to be the most interesting is behavioral economics, and it's actually a newer branch of it. Daniel Kahneman is still, he was kind of like the pioneer of it, the thinking slow. I'm actually not going to say the name of the book because I'm not thinking of it right now, but Daniel Kahneman and Evo Straversky kind of brought it into the field, and a lot of economists were very anti-behavioral economists because it moved so far away from theory and equations, and it brought in psychology, and it said also for the first time that people aren't rational, and that was kind of the underlying assumption that economics took, is that man is rational and will behave rationally. And so by introducing things like psychology and beliefs and morals and kind of family dynamics and cultural dynamics into the economic decisions that we make, I find this to be super interesting. And so nudging is a term that was coined by Richard Thaler, who won the Nobel Prize, I think in 2017. I'm checking this as I say it. Was the 2017. And so his term nudging is that the idea behind it is that choices aren't made in isolation, that there is kind of this choice architecture behind all of the choices that we make, but that also people want and need structure to make those choices. And there was a little bit of pushback when the book, he wrote the book with another economist, Cass Sunstein, and it ended up being on the New York Times bestsellers list for a really long time. And it's actually a great book. Nudge: Improving Decisions About Health, Wealth, and Happiness is the full name. And you can look at that and kind of say, because nudging has been adopted by a lot of governments and different just organizations and companies, and you can kind of come at it and say that it's maybe more manipulation, but it's actually not true at all. And he gave a really nice explanation about it when I spoke with him, and said, like, you can think about it like a GPS. You use a GPS to tell you how to get where you want to go. It gives you a route. You can choose to take that route. You can deviate from that route, but you're still getting to the destination that you want. So why not give people the clearest, best route.
Mm-hmm.
And so he gave a lot of really nice examples in a lot of industries where you can nudge people to make a better decision. So for example, I talked about something like a smart thermostat, where if you wanted to turn up the heat in the winter or turn the AC on in the summer, you would get some kind of like, sure, no problem. This will equate to an extra $1 and whatever cents on like today's billing cycle. So to kind of give people just a little bit more information that can then maybe help them not touch that dial, to then save energy, save money, in turn help save the planet. He talked about
It's kind
all
of
kinds
influence
of
on
things.
the margin, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's micro influencing that then has a disproportionate kind of overall like small things, small gestures can have a broad impact.
Yeah. And so he talked about, all kinds of different industries, but I think that you can also use it. You can use it in your own life. You can use it in your marketing tactics as a person, as a company. You can set things up in a way where you can nudge people towards what you want them to be doing or how you want them to be engaging with you. They're still choosing to, and they're still choosing the level of engagement, but you can set things up. So I wrote a piece about kind of the art of nudge marketing with a couple of examples of how that could look like. And the thing that I think is kind of really beautiful about a lot of behavioral economics or experimental economics is the underlying thesis is just so simple. And I think, and I use the comparison in the piece, like you can almost look at nudge marketing as FOMO, like fear of missing out, or George, artificial scarcity is a more elevated way of saying it.
It was like 3 a.m. and I'm looking at Carly's Google Doc, and she's like FOMO, and I said, or artificial scarcity, because I'm an asshole. But like,
but now they're both in there.
Yeah, but that's the economic term for it. Yeah.
Well, the economic term is actually loss aversion, but I try to go from loss aversion to FOMO and artificial scarcity, but they're all kind of saying the same thing. So you can activate that loss aversion, which is very economic speak. And you can do that with things like limited time offers, with countdowns, limited edition pieces as well. So, you're only going to put out 100 sleeves of this particular record or this t-shirt, or even just a actual dollar saving. So the album pre-sale, you can save this much. You're activating that loss aversion. The loss aversion bias rather means that people experience losses more profoundly than gains. And again, as with every economic theory, there are people that don't agree with that, but in behavioral economics, that's the loss aversion. Whether that's true. Pardon?
No, please, I interrupt you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. And so, things like limited time offers, also the listen or purchase counts. Again, these are all things that people are super familiar with, but if you look at it from through a slightly different lens, you can use these things. And I think the GHS models kind of use a lot of this implicitly, the listen or purchase counts, which we're all very used to. If you open up Spotify, for example, you see what people are listening to. A lot of people want that particular information. If they're not very familiar with your work, they want to know your best work, or they want to see your most popular work. And so there's these subtle things that kind of activate something in people's brains. And that's also very much the customer as a teacher model. You're not saying, listen to this directly. That number is saying, let my fans tell you what you should listen to. So it doesn't come off as very gimmicky either, but this is 100% behavioral economics. It's activating something in their brains. And that can also just be the placement of things. If you're not getting something listened to that you really want to, it can be as simple as like the order of things. I think reviews or testimonials are another kind of extension of that have the same reasoning as the listen or purchase counts. It's other people telling maybe a new fan, your existing fans are educating them. It has more impact coming from other people, but it's about using that on your own social media channels, and you can have kind of fun with that testimonial review side of things too. Like you can put out a contest have some kind of dedicated hashtag, and then you share your fan stuff. So there's kind of the architecture of participation, another GHS model that kind of feeds really nicely into that, where you're kind of activating this loss aversion, but being really engaging. But I think overall, and that's how I end the piece as well, if you want to use certain nudge tactics, and there are more than the ones I've just explained, obviously, it's really important that it's I wrote nudge, don't shove. You know, you set it up in a particular way, but it can't feel too forceful. It can't feel too gimmicky. It can't feel too marketing-y. But if you are aware of some of the tools that you can use that are subtle yet profound, it's about people not losing their choice. It's just you pointing them in the direction of what you hope that they will engage with. And so I think it can be interesting to take something that maybe you're not thinking about, like economics or behavioral economics, and see, just like we're talking about, you know, activating different platforms, to think about your marketing or how you interact with your fans in different ways. And nudging, I think, is a really applicable way. And it's I think an easy enough to grasp kind of concept overall. But so yeah, that's the piece that I put together this week. And I do really recommend the book. We'll add that in the show links too. But the book is, I think, one of the things with behavioral economics, or just kind of more the economists who take a wider look at the field itself are also the ones who are better at kind of explaining it in a way that doesn't feel too mathematical or inaccessible. And so it makes for easy and nice reading, but it's one of the areas where economics can suddenly feel a little bit more accessible to you, just as a field in general. So yes, that was a very long answer to what I wrote about this week.
It's a great piece. And it's a really important topic. And it's like, I love this podcast and these conversations because it does, I mean, my goal in life as an educator is to demystify, quote unquote, business techniques, or at least make them applicable. The analogy I always use, like with my students, is remember that time, because I'm dominantly teaching musicians, and I was like, remember that time in 11th grade where math became hard for you, right? You know, where it's
11th
like you,
grade
or whatever, 9th or 10th, whatever. But for a lot of people, like they're fine with math, and but then they get to I don't know, calculus or something where they've reached their kind of native Peter principle. They've reached the level where they just kind of can't just naturally do it. And some people can, right? And but for many musicians, they reach. So I say, well, remember that time, and like you're staring at your calculus test or whatever, and like you literally know none of the answers. It might as well be, you know. And then you look to your left or your right, and one of your fellow students, is just like racing through and doing fine. And you have that moment where like the hair on the back of your neck stands up, and you get sweaty, and you're of course your human disposition at that point is to say, I hate math. It's stupid. I don't need it. And then you go, and then you make that choice. You're like, I'm bad at math, and it's stupid, and I'm going to, no one needs it. Why would anyone need calculus in real life, right? And then you revert to the things that you are good at and give you comfort, and for musicians that typically becomes their music. I've got a longer spiel on this about globalization and how this is that, like, that feeling of you recognize that you can't do math anymore, and how that makes you feel left behind, largely explains Trump, right? Because there's a huge percentage of the population who feels deeply left behind by technology, in the same way many musicians and artists felt around 10th or 11th grade with math, and they had exactly the same response. It's stupid. Technology is stupid. I hate it. I want to go back to that feeling of comfort. That's the whole Make America Great Again, which is, you know, make it back to a time in which I understood, in the same way musicians want to go back to 4th grade when it was algebra or whatever, geometry, arithmetic. And so, you know, for me, a lot of musicians have that same inherent bias against quote unquote business or economics or whatever. And so your piece is so helpful because it humanizes it. It makes it, and I know Cass Sunstein and I've read a lot of the books, and there's another great economist called Tyler Cowen, who's also happens to be a musician or music fan rather. He was a big fan of the record label I ran, and so it takes that adjacency. It takes that, fancy word that well, I was going to say heuristic, but that applicability of like, but here's how you can use economics. And it's one of the things I worry about and I struggle with a lot, because like I'll talk about Net Promoter Score a lot because I do think it's the most important thing in the world. And I know for business, and I know that most musicians are just like, as soon as they just hear those three words, like they feel like people did in 10th grade when they saw an equation or something. It's like, oh, gross, I can't do it, and really, but then once they internalize it into their own mind, it's not hard, and economics, microeconomics at least, is just about incentives. It's just about, what are the things that make people. So I really think that the important thing, and also shout out to the amazing liner notes that you're doing every week at the end of these podcasts.
Yeah.
They are like wildly enjoyable just to read, just because of your tone. I like the fact that I'm the butt of appropriately most of the jokes, but that's good. But so like all of this, it's fine. I like that. But it's a good resource. So I think that's a big part of like why I want to do this, is to, in particular, to hear from you all about these business speak terms, whatever, and how we can demystify them and make them applicable, because then it makes people feel better about themselves, and then ultimately more confident to try things and to measure things and to test things. So it's a great piece.
Well, I think with this, sorry, I'll say one, it's things that they're probably already doing to a degree too. And so when you see that, I'm already doing this, so I can do more of this. And again, it's kind of opening it up. But sorry, Dan, I started talking at the same time.
Well, it's interesting, right? So nudge is I hadn't heard that term, right? I definitely haven't read that book, but all the things that you talk about in your article, I know, and I use in marketing.
Exactly.
And it made me think about, of course, because I'm reading that Instagram book, the different ways that Facebook and Instagram used nudge tactics, where they're both implementing user experience changes that were nudging users in different ways. But for Facebook, the metrics that they were focused on and then were nudging users towards was one, signups, to time spent on site, things that are really core cold business objectives, whereas Instagram employed nudge techniques to spark joy out of users. And that was the really big differentiation between like the growth team at Facebook that was trying to tell Instagram, you need to be doing things like when some people can tag users that are not already on Instagram via their email address, and those people receive an email saying you were tagged on Instagram. That's what Facebook did to grow. Because if you weren't on Facebook and you got tagged in a photo, you'd get an email, and that's FOMO. That's, I was tagged in a photo, and then you get notification about it.
Or just regular fear. You've been tagged in a photo.
Yeah, just fear. Whereas Instagram didn't want to do things like that, and that really changed the community around both platforms. And whereas Facebook was everyone kind of knew it was bad for you, but they used it anyway. It was like Hostess cakes or something, like junk food. And
Drugs.
or drugs.
Drugs.
Clearly you and I have different vices, George.
I love drugs.
Hostess cakes and drugs.
That's a combination, yeah. Whereas Instagram was so focused on being minimalist and sharing art and making sure that creators were the people that represented their own art. That's why they didn't employ what's now known as regramming, right? Or sharing other people's content on your feed. So the different ways that people can employ nudge techniques, I guess the word to use, says a lot about the company and what their actual goals are. Right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and putting these resources out there, I as you both know, I'm a big fan of the kind of hooked methodology. So there's a lot to unpack here, and we can continue to talk it through in other podcasts. But I like the topic, the going from that high level thing that you did, Carly, breaking it down, and then Dan, then sort of weaving that through to like actual real world applicability. That's how people learn, right? I mean, that's over time. What are you working on, Dan, or what have you written?
I am partying like it's 2014 because we're pivoting to video. That was 2014, right? Facebook's pivot to video, where every single news media stopped doing writers and started focusing on video on the platform. That's what I'm working on. So usually what we do with our content is we write an article and then we turn that into a podcast.
Who's we?
Into a video.
Us?
We all write articles.
But this entrepreneurship and art, or just like the world?
I'm talking about entrepreneurship and art right now. Yeah.
That you are.
I'm confused. I understand, but you said we're pivoting to video. I didn't know we're doing video.
We as in entrepreneurship and art. I'm forcing that via the content I'm working on. I'm not forcing you to do video.
Yeah, I don't want to be on video.
No, I know you don't.
No, but Dan is doing.
Let me get there.
Yeah.
Just terrified that all of a sudden. I mean, I am not looking my best right now. So if you think that this is going to be up on video, you have another thing coming.
But we enjoyed that Boston Managers Group webinar, which we can talk about in a moment, which was video first, right? But right now our process is typically we write an article and then we turn that into other content formats, whether that's via the podcast or doing some type of visual representation. As I think about what I'm telling my clients right now, which is that especially where media consumption, active consumption is winning. So passive consumption like podcasts and listening to just audio music is going down, and YouTube views are through the roof right now. Netflix is doing well. We should have a engaging video format rather than just the visualizers, which I've been making and will continue to make. So one thing that came up in this past week out of nowhere, I got a tweet from some music marketing consultant, some Twitter handle that I hadn't interacted with before, said, "Hey Dan, when are you doing another music industry swipe file?" Which was an article series
I love that. Yeah.
Where I just creeped on other companies and artists' ad practices and documented what they were doing. So I thought it's so easy to do that I should do it again, but I should do it as a video first content piece. Because
so when you say we, you mean more like the royal we, you Dan are
I mean entrepreneurship and art, because
I'm just trying to say I don't want my dopey face but okay.
But also some of your most engaging content outside of Zoom is video. Videos of you doing keynotes.
Yeah. Anyway, so okay.
So
we're gonna do.
So I'm using this as a test.
What is a test though?
File. What is a test? So it's this music industry swipe file.
Yes, I remember reading and loving those. Yes.
Yes. So this new one that I'm working on, I'm looking at ads from Spotify, Twitch, and I'm blanking on the name of the artist, but she's one of the recent new releases. Looking at the ads that they're running, figuring out who they're targeting, why they're using the creative that they're using, where they're sending people. And it works so much better as a video because a lot of these are video ads and there's so much that goes into that. So it was really hard for me when I was writing these I'd have to take a QuickTime screen video capture of the video ad, turn that into a GIF, and then insert that GIF into a Medium article, which was such a long process and you missed out on so much. So I thought I'll just do this as a video. So I am... When I say we are pivoting to video, I'm saying Entrepreneurship is putting out a video series, which I am pushing as myself.
I'm excited for this. I will
for
not
what
be
it's
appearing
worth,
on it.
It's clear to me, Dan, what you.
Yeah, I mean, Carly was like literally shooting daggers at me and I know this about myself. I know that there are certain things that everybody else in the world understands, and I am baffled by. Sometimes
there's also things we've discussed amongst the three of us. But in any case.
And I do like between the three of us are varying degrees of comprehension of either what someone else is saying or just the topic in general.
That's
that we
true.
kind of represent a wide range of listeners that have no fucking clue what business topic we're talking about, or just don't know whatever inside joke two people are in on and the other person isn't, can thus
True.
act as the I don't know.
But that's how I amble through the world. Like I will hear people like referencing, it'll make some reference to someone. I'll be like, who? And they'll be like, George. Kim Kardashian is a, and I was like, well, I don't know. I'm not sure, but you know, if anybody wants to talk about, you know, John Kennedy Tool or whatever, I'm down. So okay, well, I don't know 100% what it is you're talking about, but I'm up for it, and I'm looking forward to it.
He says as he shakes his head cautiously. Yeah.
With no idea what he's talking about.
I'll have the first one out this week. I don't know if it's going to be every week or every month. It's a lot of work, but I'm excited for it, and it's a fun format. And I've bought so much video gear for taking videos for clients and artist friends.
Yeah.
That I was like, maybe I should just turn this around and point it at myself.
Gotta eat your own dog food.
Well, exactly, and that's such a big part of how I wrestle with entrepreneurship and art. It's like, is it an art project or is it a business project? And it's both.
What's the difference? What's the difference?
Yeah.
I mean, the difference is sustainability, right? I mean, the difference is like art projects, right? And I mean, I'm always telling clients and people or whatever, I've got a business idea. I said, no, you have an art idea, you know, because it's a gesture that's a nice idea and you might enjoy it, but you're not going to be able to sustain it. So like trying to find that nexus between something that and you quoted Marie Kondo, that sparks joy, but also my favorite, like one of my favorite Instagram accounts is the what's that woman's name? The So Sad Now account, and one of her tweets was, looked in the mirror, did not spark joy. and that's when like when you talk about like this pivoting to a video thing, like there's never been a right. Well, there's never been a time when I've like looked in the mirror and sparked joy. Like I see pictures of myself or like me on video, like, is there a huge like edifice that I can leap from to my death?
But the
well,
point is,
so
it's like if we were to look at entrepreneurship and art as a client, there are a bunch of things we either do differently or we would add to what we're doing. Whereas when we look at it as, I just enjoy talking with you guys for an hour every week, it's there is overlap on those, but it's finding where that overlap is of, I really enjoy writing these articles, I like talking with you guys, but also I think we should be focusing on this content format, or I think we should be using more call to actions to get people from the podcast to the newsletter, or vice versa, things like that.
Yeah, sure.
I love it.
Like for me, it's all, and I think the best businesses do this. It is that nexus of, this is my purpose, is what I do, and I found a way to quote productize it, right? I found a way to make it sustainable, and there has to be both with all business. I mean, my Forbes piece this week is an interview with this guy Chuck Surak, and he founded Sweetwater, which Dan, I'm sure you're intimately familiar with, like a high end. Carly maybe too, but I mean, I know Dan, you record a lot of music. They're a high end kind of audio company, right? And they've been around for forever. They're like $1 billion company. And the reason I wrote about them was because their sales are just going through the roof. So as I continue to write about kind of that job to be done for music during quarantine, you know, it is, you know, as touring or whatever has just fallen to the zero. There are other revenue streams, other areas that are going through the roof, and one of them is Sweetwater's, and others, I suppose, sales. But I focus on it. I had the best conversation with this guy, and it does strike me with what you both are saying about kind of that overlap, and the thing that and I talk about this in the piece a lot, like, to my mind, there are three absolute essentials when it comes to business, you know, and one is the kind of purpose not product approach, right? You got to start there. The second is staying close to the customers, like not losing track, And then the third is Net Promoter Score. Like it's that, and they all interweave. And if you have those three, it's not to say that you will succeed, but your likelihood of success just goes up exponentially. It goes back to what Carly, what both of you are saying. Like those three things in George's head, like they all make sense, right? Like, but that's because I'm an educator and a nerd and everything else. Translating that into speak that humans can understand is the challenge, and that chasm between. And so Chuck did it at the opening stages of the interview. I talked about the piece. I was like, "How are you doing, man?" He's like, "Well, I'm doing great. I'm really lucky and fortunate. Our business is great, but I'm really tired because I've been out in the warehouse packing orders." And I was like, "Interview done." I was like, you just said it. You are the CEO of a $1 billion company and you are packing orders. And he goes, "Yeah, it's great because while I'm doing that, I can kind of get a sense of who these people are by what they're ordering. So they buy this thing, I'm putting it in a box. I'm like, oh, that person's making a podcast." So he does. Think of how many CEOs you all know of $1 billion companies that are packing boxes right now, right? And so that's your purpose, not product. He does not have to be doing that. Like he's doing that because he can't not do it. His staying close to the customers, yeah, that'll do it. Literally seeing what people do. And then one of the other distinctions that Sweetwater does is like you have a customer service representative. Like so they've been able to find the sweet spot, pun intended, I guess, between like the kind of lower end Guitar Centers of the world or whatever, and Amazon or whatever, which you would have thought would have stolen their market. But in terms of staying close to customers, you get a dedicated sales person. So and it's the same one. So they stay with you. So, and which is really important because like I buy some piece of gear and I talk to somebody, he says, "Well, set it up this way." And I have trouble if I have to start over again with some new, and Amazon can't do that. Like I can buy, and so the pack in the boxes and then that Net Promoter Score, 100% you're going to tell other people, well, you've got to go to Sweetwater to do this because they have these things. So in that little encapsulation of the CEO packing the boxes, that's it. That's a very human way to talk about all of the things that are very business centric.
So excited to read that piece because I've got very conflicting feelings on the company. One of the incredible things they did, though, just like buying shoes or buying clothes online, your fear with buying a guitar and instrument online is it going to fit me, right? Am I going to like it?
Zappos, yeah.
And does he talk about how they got over that hump in the?
No, and it's a great follow-up.
I mean, I can talk about it. But, so basically all they do is they quality check the guitars before they go out just to make sure it's good.
That's a big thing, right? There's nudging,
everything. It's everything because you can't just go and try out one of those guitars before you play it. But if you know that you're getting one that is properly set up and has no issues, you're that much more likely to keep it and not return it or have any type of buyer's remorse.
But you're right, and this is that skeuomorphism. I opened the piece talking about how asking the question, and Dan, you've heard me say this. Lots of people, why do guitar stores have mirrors? Right, because like in theory, you wouldn't think that you need a mirror. I mean, it doesn't make sense. But when you think about job to be done, part of the job to be done of a guitar is not just the audio thing; it's to make you look like Jimmy Page, right? So and that was a big frame. And Carly, you've been very kind talking about kind of the GHS models and stuff. But that mirror of desire, a big part of that was that observation that I had decades ago of like, wait, why is there a mirror in this guitar store? Because it's reflecting back at you a more idealized version of yourself holding a guitar. Anyway,
I'm not being kind. It's because they work.
They do work. They do work. All right, 3 things.
Yeah. Do you want to start this week, George? You haven't started before.
Yeah.
Oh, you caught me. I mean, I have my notes, but sure. Get my 3 things. I used my Bear app, which was one of my 3 things, to keep my 3 things through the week. Let me find them here. Hold on, you put me on the spot. I never go first. Oh, now I can't find anything.
can't decide whether I want to
Technology.
keep you.
I got
I
it.
want to edit out you frantically searching for this, or if that's
No, it's good. Keep me
Great.
frantic. Is good. All right. So my three things. All right. So the first one is this great newsletter that I found called Flow State. I will not embarrass myself by trying to pronounce. There's a great book called Flow, and for a while I tried to learn how to pronounce the dude's name. It's just all consonants. Like he's it's just all C's and Z's and things. But it's an amazing book. It's really old, but Flow is best described kind of, it's like Rudder's High or something. But you get this, and as writers, as musicians, as athletes, you all know this. Like as that moment where you kind of lose track of time and I get it sometimes when I'm teaching, but so flow state is what you kind of always aspire to, and we can put in the liner notes the book. It's worth reading. Anyway, so there's this podcast called Flow State, and they every day they send out just like one. It's not even a playlist. It's like, here's this artist. It typically is instrumental, some ambient stuff or whatever, but a lot of things that I hadn't heard of before. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, where it's just kind of in that background. And their business model is great too, where it's again, they give away X%, and this is a nudging thing too, X% where you can listen every day. But if you want that curated thing, here, pay us $5 or whatever. And Dan, you've talked about that too. So I found this band called the Olympians, and they're amazing. They're on Daptone, which is Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings label, and it's like I never heard of them, and so props to Flow State, kind of keeping in that same kind of mindset. So I it is really weird relationship. Well, not weird. I have my relationship with Buddhism, and I don't talk about it a lot, but it's there when I need it, and it informs a lot of things in the way that I approach life or try to. But so I've been just like going back, and there's a great book called the Spirit of Buddhist Meditation, and I won't talk too much about it, but I thought, I just went back to reread it, and talks about how the Buddha was trying to teach somebody how to meditate, and he didn't say anything. He just handed the aspirant, the person trying to learn, just handed him a flower in silence, and that was it. That was his lesson, right? And it makes all the sense in the world to me, because like it so much of these times these days, we're dancing about architecture, right? Like we're trying to describe things with words or with other, and sometimes it's just, no, here's this flower, and I'm not going to say anything more about it. And I just found that really beautiful, and it kind of ties to the whole skeuomorphism. But and then the third thing, again, in Insomnia Land, I find YouTube to be just the rabbit hole of all rabbit holes. But as everybody knows, I found this thing called What's in My Bag, which is something that the great record store Amoeba, which I think one of them's closing. I mean, talk about a casualty of quarantine. But if you don't know Amoeba, there was one in San Francisco, one in LA. I think those were the only two. Those were the only two I was ever at. And they were just so perfect. Just these vast, talk about, someone that just did something because they wanted to scratch their own itch. Like you could find everything, but it was really well curated. And I just loved Amoeba, and I spent, fortunes. Anyway, so Kim Gordon, who's a long time kind of just, hero of mine, bass player for Sonic Youth, and just artist herself. And if you haven't read her biography, it's so great. It's a great book. But so they did a What's in My Bag, which is they just ask, okay, they allow artists to go through. Kurt Kirkwood from the Meat Puppets did one, which the choices were very strange. But so Kim Gordon goes through, and then they say, well, what did you pick? And her picks were so great. And first off, like she holds up vinyl, and she's just like, man, I just love the feel of it. And that's, we haven't talked about this podcast, but one of my dominant themes in kind of thinking and teaching and consulting is the social object, like the importance of a thing. And that's another thing that we're lacking in quarantine land, where it's like, don't have a thing to touch, it's all digital. So but then she goes I just noted down some of her picks. 90s hip hop, which I love. So she talks about Nas, and it makes, it's great, it's just enduring. Then she goes right from there to Zeppelin in the record with they're going to California, right, on it. So like from Nas to that, like I love that. And then she says she'd heard that Jimmy Page wept when he heard Joni Mitchell's song For a Seagull, right? So like this is like the inside of my brain. Like she's connecting these dots, going from Nas to Zeppelin to Joni Mitchell, and then she talks about this band that I know no one has ever heard, and yet I put them on the other day. Just I don't even know what, called Spaceman 3. And they had a record when I was in high school I just loved. It was called, Music to Take Drugs to Make Music to Take Drugs to, or something like that. And if anybody would ever know them, it's because one of the dudes in Spaceman 3 became spiritualized, right? So maybe some people have heard of the band Spiritualized, I don't know, but they were just, and the music holds up in there. So she picked a Spaceman 3 record, and then she goes to Archie Shepp, right? This amazing kind of jazz, artist, and talks about his record Epitaph of a Small Winter, which if you hear Archie Shepp or any of that kind of Ornette Coleman stuff, and then you contextualize it around what Sonic Youth did in some of their great records and great moments of just that like dissonant, tough, gnarl thing that to me is the most, and I've written a lot about this, the most beautiful sounds. Just that sound of Sonic Youth at their most dissonant makes all the sense in the world to me. Like I have this weird form of synesthesia where I don't see colors, I see shapes, and when I hear music, or I feel shapes, and those shapes line up. So it's a cool piece, and it's just anyway. That's my third thing. Kim Gordon's "What's in My Bed."
I love that.
Cool. Carly, what do you have?
So, well, I mean, it was actually snowing here yesterday, as I mentioned to you, Dan, earlier, but last week was so nice and sunny that I spent so much time outside reading, and I go through waves where I like won't pick up a book for ages, and then I'll just kind of devour them. Last week I read David Sedaris' Calypso, and I can't recommend it enough. I read it in like a couple of days. It's really easy to read, first of all, but I love him so much, and I think it's also like the perfect book to read right now. It has a nice mix of like he's so funny, so I was literally like giggling out loud as I was reading it, but it also talks about like death and family and kind of confronting your own mortality and that of your family members. But I've heard his voice enough on podcasts and interviews and stuff like that it was almost like he was narrating the book for me, which made it so much more enjoyable to read. I could really hear his voice. And so I loved that book. And then I actually did something kind of crazy yesterday, and I left the house and saw some family members. I went and saw an aunt and cousin of mine, like an hour away. They've been totally quarantined and self-isolated, and we felt like it would be safe to kind of let each other in. And it was funny, I actually like put on lipstick and earrings for the occasion. I was so excited to see other humans. But then yesterday was super nice because my aunt and I just spent time like reading, and I started reading Tara Westover's Educated, and I'm only about halfway through, but I'm halfway through in a day, and I'm loving that so far. So I'm on a big reading kick right now. And then something that I revisited this last week, and it was actually because I had mentioned it to George, there's a podcast called Transmissions from Jonestown, and I had started it, I don't know when I started it, but like months ago. I think it's older, maybe from 2016, but I realized that I hadn't listened to the last 2 episodes. So I listened to the last 2 episodes, and then I'm like restarting it. And it's this woman that, all of the tapes that came from Jonestown, a lot of them had been reused and taped over several times. And so she actually went and digitized these tapes, and you can hear interviews from people who were actually at the Jonestown compound, both leading up to the mass suicide, if that's what you believe. I mean, you mentioned the rabbit hole of YouTube. One thing that's really cool in this podcast is at the beginning of every episode, she says, when you hear my voice, this is a kind of proven or known to be true fact. If you hear someone else's voice, it's someone else's kind of account based on their research or their kind of perception or their memories, or they're tied to a family member, but it's not something that you can actually like kind of necessarily back up. And I think that's also a really cool way to tell a story, to say like, there are all these other theories and I'm going to give them space, but when I'm saying it, it means that this has been researched and fact checked, and you know, there's kind of proof or whatever. And there was also papers that were released in like 1978, government papers, so there was a lot more information that came out then, but they go through, I mean, I know the story that we were all kind of told, but it's such a wild story. I recommend it. Yeah, but I mean, like all of the conspiracy theories and stuff, and a lot of people think that the Jonestown Massacre was actually just an extension of the MK Ultra program, like the CIA was
LSD,
so yeah, and the mind control tactics and all of that stuff, and there are, again, there's a lot of like third party voices where who knows, it could just be other kind of ideas or theories, but it's so much more interesting than I think what we see at the surface. Like it's such a crazy, bizarre, horrible, but fascinating story. And so if anyone's looking to fall down a rabbit hole, the podcast itself actually can be like slightly eerie and almost like has a scary tone to it, because she's playing these recordings which are, you know, not of great quality, or it's Jim Jones just like screaming at the crowd of people, and it can be kind of like intense to listen to. And I think it's probably why I stopped, because I like devoured the first part of it and then I never even finished the second two. But finishing the two last week, yeah, like I said, I've restarted it because I want to hear it kind of as told as one story. And if you're interested in that as a story, or you're interested in kind of conspiracy theory genre type of stuff, I definitely recommend it. The Transmissions of Jonestown.
Wow, I'm totally listening to that.
Yeah. And what about you? I mean, it's a heavy thing to listen to.
No, I said that was a weird time in America, you know, and that, and Sun Young Moon and all that. Wow, yeah, I can't wait. And Patty Hearst, all that, you know.
Saran, like so many things are brought up.
Saran, yeah, Bobby Kennedy, yeah, man.
Yeah, and so again, but it's I don't know. I kind of love those things. It goes all the way to the top.
I'm glad we didn't end the episode with that recommendation.
But I'm also going to add a song to the playlist. There's a song called The Jonestown Massacre that is also, it's like such a beautiful, eerie song.
Well, it's a band. The Brian Jonestown Massacre is a great band.
Yeah. And what about you, Dan? Are you going to end us on a more positive note?
God, I hope so. Yeah. All right. So my first thing, I've become a big fan of this dude, Ali Abdaal. He is 25 years old. He's a junior doctor in Cambridge, England, and he has this amazing content output. And he does a couple things. He's got a podcast with his brother called Not Overthinking, where they talk about like psychology books that they're reading, and his brother is a founder of a technology startup. Ali is a doctor and also does videos and blogs and stuff like that. So it's such an interesting pedigree that this guy has. And it's, as I become more interested in the concept of like polymaths and people that have kind of a wide range of expertise, he's a great example. But I think I was trying to figure out why I like his stuff so much, because although I think he's great, there's a lot of great content like this out there. And he talks a lot about productivity, and I think we all care about productivity, but especially on YouTube, productivity YouTube videos, it's like when jocks graduate and they're no longer the football players, they need something to talk about. It's like, I'm going to talk about productivity, and it's like hustle porn, and it's like Gary Vee,
and hustle porn. Wow.
And so it's this,
that.
I love learning more about anyone that has limited time, right? Really cares about productivity, but I usually hate the personalities of the people that are talking about it. So
Yeah. Oh
this
man, there's like a
this
productivity bro culture.
Yeah,
exactly.
Wow.
totally.
And so this is some
Oh, like
nerdy
what's his
20
name? Tim Ferriss. Yeah, yeah. Oh
yeah.
man. Yeah.
So this is some nerdy 25-year-old doctor in England talking about his favorite. He uses 3 different note apps on his iPad, and that's the first person I've talked, or not talked to, but I've seen talk about why they need different note-taking apps. Because this is the same way for me. I picked up Bear originally because I think it was M.G. Siegler wrote about it, his writing process, and that was one of the apps. So I
Mhm.
use that. I've been using Notion, and I use
Mhm.
the Apple Notes app all together
Mhm.
because I have different purposes for them. And
Yeah.
Ali made this great comparison because he says people have asked him, why the hell do you need to use so many different note-taking apps? He says, well, would you ask a carpenter why they need 3 different hammers? Right?
That's great.
Hmm.
That's great. They serve different job to be done.
Mhm.
I'm sorry to hijack, but holy hell. I mean, this is right up my alley, you know, and so I swapped from Bear, and then I've got my reminders in a certain way. And then I've got, that's a great analogy. It's a different tool for a different job.
Exactly. And so he's taking a lot of these topics that I think just the wrong talking heads have taken on, and he's
Mm.
putting that, maybe it's just my mirror, right? I like seeing someone that's kind of nerdy talking about this
Sure.
stuff. And through that, he also teaches, he's got a couple courses on this platform called Skillshare,
Mm-hmm.
which I signed up for a 2-month trial membership of. And what I love about it, it's mostly creative courses about creative things, whether it's videography, photography, graphic design, but they've added some business stuff in there and things like writing and public speaking. But it's all by people that are like my age, mid to late 20s, early 30s, that are all they're all video natives. So it's all people that are experts in something, but they also have great video capabilities without doing like a really dry Lynda course, LinkedIn type thing. It feels more relevant because these are people that are learning it right now. They probably learned this stuff 2 years ago, and now they're creating a course on it. It's not like learning business from Bob Iger. It's like learning business from someone that it is currently growing their own business. So it feels more relevant. It feels more applicable. So I've been enjoying that a lot. And the third thing I have, Carly, I'd forgotten you brought this up on the first episode. I'm sorry. But Carly, you brought up that what happens with all these bands and artists that were kind of just scraping by before this happened, or were just getting some momentum, and now there's 2+ months of possibly no movement, possibly no career growth. And there's this band that I adore from I think the members live in Manhattan and Brooklyn, called Loose Buttons. They're this indie rock band. I compare them to someone like the Hold Steady,
Mm.
and they were just getting this great trajectory. They did an album release show in January or February. I went to. It was sold out. The room was packed. And it was like, these guys are, it's hard to make it as a rock band right now. It's much harder than I think it's ever been, but these guys were really like leading some type of movement, and they're getting a serious fan base behind them, and their new album is amazing. And so I was thinking about them. I was like, what are these guys doing? Is it, how do you go from feeling like you're on a rocket ship to now you're just like stuck on the moon or something?
Trough of despair, brother.
Yeah.
Trough of
Well,
despair.
exactly. But so I've been listening to their music again and getting a little bit nostalgic, because I hadn't listened to their music at all during quarantine. I maybe listened to too much right beforehand when their album came out, and so I was taking that kind of natural break after you get obsessive about something. So it's kind of taking me back to being in New York, going to these, the venue was like underground. It's not literally an underground rock show. And those kind of artists that I really like, I really care about. They're the type of art that makes me love music, but it's also the type of artist that is probably struggling the most right now.
Wow. I'm gonna check them out. I love me some Hold Steady.
I know you love some Hold Steady. Yeah, I'll add them to the playlist.
So
Can you see what they're up to? Like, have they been active on social media at all? Have they given any updates?
They were putting out some videos that they had recorded before all this went down. The lead singer did an Instagram live session on the Men's Health IG channel, which got like no views. It was the most. It was just, you're not quite getting something. Yeah, but that's. I mean, it's a classic issue of great music doesn't equate to great marketing, great business sensibilities.
Yeah.
But I think they're great.
I do want to, before we stop, you know, it was graduation for Berkeley, my students yesterday, and I just want to shout out to them, all the I mean, and while no, there will not be another Little Richard, there will be great art and great musicians, and the students everywhere graduating today, you know, during these times. That's where it's gonna come from, and they're going out there into a world right now that's never been more uncertain. But I have complete and utter faith that they will find the path through. So I think it's worth taking a moment to just recognize graduates everywhere, but certainly my students. Man, I learned so much from them.
I can't imagine doing an online graduation.
Yeah.
All right, take it easy. I want one of those T-shirts.
I want to try out a new platform, so I think everyone will be getting T-shirts, and we'll figure out a way to give them away to listeners or email subscribers or something.
Yes.
We'll try to have fun with it rather than it being corny. But I think they look great.
Yeah,
I think they look great too. Yeah.
With the logo.
I mean, we'll just throw a Dave Matthews Band logo on there.
Yeah, well, you brought up Dave Matthews so much, we're adding it to the playlist.
I will delete it. No, there's only one Dave Matthews song that you're allowed to put in there, and that's Crash. But like, nobody needs to hear that again.
Why Crash?
We'll fight about Dave Matthews. I mean,
no, like
all right, bye.
Bye.
Woo.